aspect. But again, I think there's also a value, as an economist, there's a value element, because it seems like every time we have any kind of economic crisis, the first set of programs that get threatened are the creative arts or so on. And I don't know, Bich, what do you think about that as a writer and a novelist with our educational sort of funding systems? With the funding system for schools and the way.
I think the problem is it's almost impossible to quantify the value of the arts. But without the arts, we don't really have humanity. And I always tell my students this quote from one of my favorite writers, contemporary writers, Ian McEwan. He said somewhere that the ability to imagine what it is like to be someone other than ourselves is the beginning of humanity. It is the essence of compassion, and it is the start of our morality. And I believe that, because again, they can't quantify that, but it makes us simply better people to be a part of the arts, to have an education in the arts, and to be able to contribute to culture making.
There was a mention about quality of life. Max was mentioning that, and I actually had something which it's a French concept, as you all know, the joie de vivre. The sort of notion of being and being happy. And in terms of, it sort of ties into the question of beauty. I was struck once, I was in a small town in Italy, in one of the hill towns, and there were 3 elderly gentlemen, and I was having a coffee, and I think it took me probably about a couple hours to have this coffee. And all they were doing is arguing the location of a simple stone wall. It was just so important to them how that sort of what we would seem sort of meaningless stone wall, but it was part of the town, and that's where it is. But it all has to do with this sense of enjoying life. Is that a factor, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, yes, to the point of the stone wall, yes, as our friend Mr. Eames would say, the details aren't the details are the design, right? So, I mean, that in a very particular sense, but in a larger sense, this idea of being happy where you are, I think goes back to this sense of identity, right? And if the Midwest has a kind of universal malaise, it's this kind of, we have an identity as a region of the country, but rarely do we have identities as states or even as cities. And I think in our personal lives, it's much easier to be happy when schools are not measured on the aesthetic sensibilities of their graduates, right? Or on their compassion, or on their ability to empathize. They are measured on addition and subtraction and things of that nature. So if the incentives and the way people were kind of judged shifted a little bit, I think you'd see a shift in what we consider important.
Well, thank you all. I believe we are at the second stage of this session, which, but first, please help me thanking our panel with their